83-year-old President Alassane Ouattara announced last month that he would seek a fourth term in October's elections, arguing that a 2016 constitutional change had reset the clock on his already 14-year tenure of the world's largest cocoa producer.
So we have some major breaking news coming from Ivory Coast. The people in Ivory Coast have decided to follow Ibrahim Traoré. And let me tell you, from yesterday, the people are on their streets and they are demanding their president, Alassane Ouattara, to step down.
Mon papa Alassane là, il n'a qu'à laisser 4 ans mandat. Faut pas, il va écouter bouche de ses partisans qui le suivent là. Il est fatigué. De toute façon, il me plaît comme ça là. Il n'a qu'à quitter au pouvoir.
What is going on in the Ivory Coast? The country has erupted. Tens of thousands are in the streets. Soldiers are murmuring dissent. And the president stands accused of staging a constitutional coup. Alassane Ouattara's bid for a fourth term has ignited a fire his government may no longer be able to control. But how did a nation once celebrated as West Africa's success story end up on the edge of collapse? It all began quietly on the morning of August 9, 2025. There were whispers of a protest planned in Abidjan, the country's economic heart. But by midday, those whispers had become a roar. Neighborhoods emptied into the streets. Tens of thousands surged through the city's arteries, chanting, waving banners, and demanding one thing: President Ouattara must step down. This wasn't just another protest. It was a nationwide eruption of defiance, cutting across class, region, and political lines. In the sprawling district of Yopougon, students abandoned their classes and marched with hand-painted signs reading "No to dictatorship" and "Fourth term equals betrayal." In the business district of Plateau, office workers walked out and joined union-led strikes. Inland towns like Bouaké and Korhogo saw farmers block highways with burning tires and overturned trucks, choking off supply lines. This time, the resistance wasn't confined to the cities. The countryside rose too, a rare and unmistakable sign that this was a truly national uprising. Footage shared online captured the raw emotion on the ground. In one clip, a group of women beat drums outside a police station, daring officers to confront them.
Mon papa Alassane là, il n'a qu'à laisser 4 ans mandat. Faut pas, il va écouter bouche de ses partisans qui le suivent là. Il est fatigué. De toute façon, il me plaît comme ça là. Il n'a qu'à quitter au pouvoir. Parce qu'on lutte pour nos enfants pour demain. Pour les vieux là, on lutte pas pour eux. On lutte pour nos enfants demain.
In another, young men climbed a government building to unfurl a massive banner reading, "Democracy or nothing." The chants, the unity, the sheer number of people, it all carried the energy of a population who believed this was their last chance to save their democracy. Observers were struck not just by the scale of the protests, but by the unlikely coalitions behind them. Longtime political rivals who had spent years at odds now marched side by side. Leaders from Laurent Gbagbo's PPACI movement joined forces with members of Tidjane Thiam's PDCI-RDA. Student unions, women's groups, transport workers, they all synchronized their efforts. It was a front never seen before in Ivorian politics. Not forged by ideology, but by a shared belief that Ouattara's fourth-term bid marked the end of democracy. Meanwhile, security forces, usually quick to crush dissent, appeared hesitant. Tear gas was deployed in some areas, but the crowds reassembled within minutes. Soldiers in several zones were seen speaking quietly with protesters instead of confronting them. And that raised a chilling question. Was the military starting to waver? In a country with a history of mutinies and coups, even a hint of cracks within the army was enough to rattle both the government and the opposition. The risks were real. Journalists reported harassment. Protesters were detained. But instead of retreating, the crowds dug in. "We're not afraid anymore," shouted one protester into a camera, his face streaked with sweat and tear gas. "If we don't fight now, we'll never have a country again."
Il n'y a pas de distinction des partis politiques. Nous sommes un peuple et nous sommes venus dire oui et oui à la réinscription du président Laurent Gbagbo et du président Tidjane Thiam et non à une forfaiture, non à un 4e mandat.
As night fell, barricades lit the streets of Abidjan. The chants continued well into the darkness. No one believed this was a one-day protest. It felt like the beginning of something much bigger. At the heart of it all lies a deeper issue. This isn't just anger over one man or one election, it's about the Constitution. Ivorians say Ouattara has crossed a red line, twisting the law to stay in power. And that leads to a pivotal question. What does the Constitution actually say? And how has the president justified his run? That's where the firestorm truly began. Under the 2016 Constitution, enacted after years of reform, the presidency is clearly limited to 2 terms. At the time, it was hailed as a safeguard against lifelong rule, a plague that has haunted many African nations. But in late July 2025, Ouattara declared he would run again, claiming that the 2016 Constitution reset the clock. His argument is that because the Constitution was adopted during his presidency, his previous 2 terms, from 2011 to 2020, don't count under the new law. By that logic, he's only served 1 term under the current framework, making him eligible for another. Legally convenient, politically explosive. To the opposition, that reasoning isn't just flawed, it's fraudulent. They argue the intent of the 2016 reform was crystal clear: to limit power, not extend it. To them, Ouattara's bid is a betrayal of reform, a manipulation of the Constitution to serve one man's ambition. That's why banners now scream coup against the Constitution and no to a Third Republic dictatorship.
And 3 reasons we're here is because the former president of the Ivory Coast, Laurent Gbagbo, is excluded from the electoral list, along with Guillaume Soro and Tidjatiam. So, and the second reason of the many reasons we're here is the systematic oppression and the modern day slavery and the exploitation that the Ivory Coast and the whole African diaspora is facing. And one of the third reasons we're here is because the influence comes from the Western powers, putting dictators in position to exploit the African resources. So I say that it is shocking and disappointing that in 2025, we are still forced to confront the systematic oppression and the exploitation of Africa and its diaspora. These matters don't even concern the politicians, but it is a matter of the future of Africa, which is the youth, as he said before. The future of Africa, we must stand and support the freedom fighters, such as Laurent Gbagbo, such as the people that came before us, Tidjatiam, Guillaume Soro, and also the president of Burkina Faso, currently Ibrahim Traoré. We must stand and fight behind them. So this is a powerful analogy. Someone invades your home, right, and comes into your house and force you and your family into your basement at gunpoint. And they deny you and your family food, electricity, and water. They then demand you to work for pennies in your own backyard, forcing you to serve them, cook, clean, and maintain their comfort, while you and your loved ones slowly starve and die off. Meanwhile, they profit from the resources and the minerals off of your land. This is not an analogy. This is the lived reality of the African people. While Africa feeds the whole world, we are starving. We are emotionally, mentally, and spiritually starving. The question is simple.
Ivorians believe he's weaponized a loophole that was never meant to exist. But this legal debate alone doesn't explain the nationwide outrage. What truly pushed people to the brink was the systematic sidelining of Ouattara's challengers. The Electoral Commission disqualified Tidjatiam, an internationally respected former banker who many saw as the strongest opponent, on the basis of past French citizenship. Laurent Gbagbo, a former president with deep grassroots support, was also barred due to prior convictions. Other candidates were blocked over minor issues: residency, paperwork, technicalities. The result? A ballot with no serious contenders. To the opposition, this wasn't an election. It was a coronation. Legal experts and civil society leaders warned that this narrowing of the political field amounted to what they call constitutional capture, where the very law meant to protect democracy is bent to ensure one man's rule. Even the tone of Ouattara's announcement rattled many. He did not present himself as reluctantly returning out of necessity, but rather as a seasoned statesman entitled to remain in power. For Ivorians, it confirmed their deepest fear, that the promise of reform had been hollow from the start, and that the president never intended to leave. The anger is intensified by memory. Ivory Coast's modern history is scarred by disputed elections. The 2010 crisis between Ouattara and Gbagbo spiraled into a civil war that left over 3,000 people dead. To many, this moment feels dangerously familiar. "We promised ourselves never again," said one opposition lawyer on national radio. But here we are, history repeating itself under the cover of constitutional trickery. This is why the protests go beyond politics. They're about survival. They're about whether Ivorians can trust their constitution to protect them from creeping authoritarianism. When people chant in the streets, they're not just opposing one man. They're defending the very idea that rules, rights, and limits still matter. But here lies the paradox. If Ouattara claims the constitution justifies his candidacy, why are so many convinced it's a betrayal? To understand that, you have to look beyond the text of the law and into the lived experience of the people. On paper, the Ivory Coast is one of Africa's fastest-growing economies. But on the ground, many say the wealth has passed them by. And it's that gap between constitutional promise and daily hardship that has turned frustration into rage. And now, the country stands at a crossroads. Whether this ends in real democratic change or further descent into crisis remains to be seen. But one thing is certain. The people of Ivory Coast are no longer whispering. They are roaring. To truly understand why so many Ivorians are rejecting Alassane Ouattara's claim to legitimacy, you have to look beyond constitutional law, beyond political speeches, and into the painful divide between numbers on a page and the lives people actually live. Internationally, the Ivory Coast has been hailed as an economic success story. Since Ouattara took office, the country has posted average growth rates of 6% per year, placing it among Africa's top-performing economies. Abidjan has transformed into a gleaming metropolis of skyscrapers, highways, and shopping malls. Multinational corporations have poured billions into cocoa, oil, and telecoms. And development banks have applauded the president for attracting foreign investment and restoring macroeconomic stability. But ask the ordinary citizen, and you'll hear a different story. For most Ivorians, that success is something they've only read about in headlines. It hasn't reached their homes, their neighborhoods, or their tables. Just outside Abidjan's glittering plateau district, in sprawling outskirts and rural towns, people complain of stagnant wages and rising food prices. In villages across the north and west, children still walk miles for water. Farmers can't get fair prices for their crops. They say the economic miracle is a mirage, visible to outsiders but not to them. The frustration is especially intense among the youth, who make up over 70% of the population. This generation grew up on promises of modernization, progress, and opportunity, but those promises feel empty. Despite impressive GDP numbers, youth unemployment remains high. University graduates can't find formal jobs. Many are forced into the informal sector, working as motorcycle taxi drivers, street vendors, or day laborers. These young people were supposed to be the future. Instead, they feel forgotten. It's no surprise they're now among the loudest voices in the streets, not just protesting a fourth term, but an entire system that has shut them out. Adding fuel to the fire are corruption scandals, allegations of inflated contracts, favoritism in government tenders, embezzlement by elites. Many citizens believe that the political class has enriched itself while asking everyone else to be patient. To them, Ouattara's government no longer represents national development. It represents gatekeeping. It ensures that prosperity flows only to the connected few.